Wolves, you've always been impressed by them since Gary O'Neill's been in charge, haven't you? Their front line especially is really one that catches the eye. And I think the way they set up against Spurs, it seems like a bit of a bogey team for them now, doesn't it? But they did the business again from a few different fronts. But what impressed you most about Wolves this weekend?
I thought Wolves performed really well. I think one thing as well at the minute, I think with the loss of Cunha as well, that's massive for them, really. And timely as ever, Hwang coming back in and filling that spot perfectly. But I thought the way that they actually performed in this game, I think they're just the perfect team, really. How they set up. Spurs just really found it hard to find space in behind them. They're just so rigid in their structure. And a few performers, I think, in this particular game. I think we need to highlight João Gomez, who's been, really, really good for Wolves so far this season. Not particularly well known for the attacking side of his game, but you wouldn't think that, because the way he took his 2 goals, particularly the second one, was outstanding. He's a player who's fully capable of getting from one side of the pitch up to the other, but for that second goal, and he allowed himself to get into the position for the strike, was out of this world, and you'd say it's probably a result that they deserved. And we speak about Wolves, it's almost like they found this stability in the team now, the balance that they've managed to find. Obviously, Neto coming back this season was a massive one for them. The creativity and the work that he does for the second goal, is out of this world. And there's not many better forward players in the Premier League for me than Pedro Neto, and he's fully deserved all the attention. And I'm sure Wolves fans won't be liking the sort of the murmurs and the transfer rumours that are going around at the minute. There's a lot of the bigger teams are looking at him, but I really expected Spurs to really take initiative, because they've actually, obviously over the last few weeks, especially with the return of a lot of their players, obviously Maddison and Van der Ven coming back into the team, you just thought they've been showing this consistency. It was a surprise result for me, and especially with the loss of Cunha for Wolves, who's been a real talisman and danger man for them over the last few weeks. It's got to be reassuring for Wolves fans to see that they're still putting the performances with the loss of those key players.
Gary O'Neil was saying in the post-match that he thought his team was faultless, and they kind of had to be, really, to take on Spurs, who are coming back to full strength as well. And I thought every player who was involved in the attacking phase especially played brilliantly. Again, you say Pedro Neto's work rate was fantastic and crucial for the second goal. And whether they hang on to him as well is going to be key to whether they can kick on next season. And how many seasons have we said that about Wolves' key players, whether they can hold on to them. But he is definitely sort of the one at the minute, really, that you could almost put in that upper bracket, could play for any team in the league. But I was really impressed with just the way they dealt with Tottenham's attempt at pressing them and kind of comfortably passing it around them and pinging balls from wing to wing and really making it difficult for Spurs to get a foothold on the game. But what was it about Wolves, do you think, Miles, that kind of impressed you, and which players kind of stood out in this performance?
Systemically, they were strong across the pitch, weren't they? That back three was really effective at kind of keeping Spurs out. They were really tight. Dawson and Kilman in particular, they're such excellent defenders. And Dawson, as an experienced pro now, has really added a lot to that Wolves team, because he leads the back line so well. He commands the rest of his players around it, but also he's quite effective on the ball going forward as well. He put an excellent ball into the box at one point, and you'd think that it would come from their star midfielder instead of him. So I think their organisation was really strong, considering how little they had of the ball. They had to be patient. I think they had 29% possession in this game, whereas the week before they'd had 70. So we're seeing that Wolves have actually got a lot of different dimensions to what they're capable of doing. And that's really impressive for a team of this sort of level. They're sitting 3 points off 7th all of a sudden, when we were talking about them as pretty much nailed on for relegation before a ball was kicked this season. So it's interesting how quickly they've turned things around. And actually, turning things around quickly was what they did in this game. Their counter-attack was just absolutely superb. Yeah. Neto, as we mentioned, he's electric. Sarabia, he's a quality footballer and offers a lot going forward, and he was really threatening. And it took Vicario some pretty impressive saves to keep Wolves from from potentially scoring more in this game as well. So it is really encouraging for Wolves fans. They'll feel less encouraged by the talk that's surrounding them, that they kind of have to sell Neto in the summer just to keep up with FFP. And that feels, I don't know, it just doesn't feel nice, does it? When you see these clubs that are kicking on to a new level and are trying to keep up with the sort of top 4, top 5, top 6, but they're then forced to sell their best players to those same clubs because they have to keep up with certain laws in place. And if Wolves lose Pedro Neto to Arsenal or Liverpool in the summer, for example, then they've got to start again. And realistically, we're not going to see them where they're kind of aiming for this season. That doesn't feel like that should be what FFP is there for. So there's a lot of really positive things around Wolves at the moment, but I'd like to see them hold on to the positives and keep that going for longer.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of players in Wolves who had a point to prove and a reputation to kind of back up. And I think seeing their reputations actually come to fruition and for the performances to match what we hoped and expected from some of these players has been the biggest turnaround for Wolves for me, because expectations were quite low. But I think the biggest kind of surpassing of expectations, Dave, was probably Gary O'Neill, and proving a lot of people wrong with his tactical acumen. And there's no coincidence, really, that he kind of counteracted Ange Ball twice this season, because I think he sees a clear way of doing that with the players he's got. And we talked about, obviously, the counter-attack and how they had to kind of be patient and wait for their moment, how they've been able to sort of evade that press quite comfortably as well. But I thought defensively, they were so disciplined, and that low block to try and frustrate Spurs kind of left them almost limited to chances from distance as well. I think respect for Gary O'Neill's still quite low, and I'm surprised at that. Do you think he deserves more credit to his name?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, obviously, Miles is perfectly right, and he's displayed fully how he can navigate his way through games. He's shown in these couple of games against Spurs this season, and that they are able to play in different, obviously use a weaponry to their own advantage. And we speak about, obviously, them being a counter-attacking. They're far more than just a counter-attacking team for me. I think the way they actually played this game, if you watch how many little chances Spurs, I mean, even the goal that Spurs scored, it was really well created by Kulusevski, and a little toe poke at the end through the goalkeeper's legs. It was a bit fortunate for my liking, and just how many chances that Wolves managed to limit them to just speaks volumes, I think, with how well they have played. And I think you're right, Miles. I think that the defence this season and how far some of the players have come. I think Nelson Semedo has had a really good season, really solid, and he's always been earmarked as a player who's not been particularly great defensively, but his defensive game's come on so far. And the players that have just come into the squad, Nori is also not played every single week, but when he's come in, he's really stood out as well. So look, he's shown he's a manager that is fully capable and adapting to different situations, different games, and I fully agree. I just don't think he does get the credit that he probably deserves.
Well, I guess the question is now, Miles, if you look at the table, especially mid-table where Wolves are at 11th place, the teams above them arguably aren't performing as well, are they? I mean, Chelsea's forms are different. West Ham, as we know, we talked about last week in some depth, really struggling at the moment to gain any sort of traction and momentum. Newcastle even is an unknown quantity right now. I'm pretty sure they'll have them in their sights, surely. What do you reckon the hope and expectation is for Wolves fans now?
I don't know whether they'll have much like hope or expectation. I think this season almost becomes a bit of a free hit, because it seems like they are already exceeding what they would have expected. I think realistically, if you had said to any Wolves fan at the start of the season, what would you like from this season? They would have said safety, aiming for mid-table. So the fact that they find themselves in a position where actually they could find themselves in the Conference League, that would be amazing for Wolves, because that was their vision, wasn't it? To get back in the Premier League and consolidate and then move for Europe. And they got to Europe really quickly when they got back promoted, obviously. And it kind of moved quicker than they intended to. So if they could get back to that point again, that'd be amazing for them.